Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing Kingdom Come Deliverance on Nintendo Switch. So, okay, right away, I'm blown away that this game actually came out on Nintendo Switch. It came out a few months ago. Man, how the hell did they fit CryEngine on the Switch? Well, they did a lot of cuts, but I mean, after playing this on my PC, that was super demanding when it came out. Right now, again, I cannot believe I'm seeing this at so few watts. It's using basically no power in comparison to my computer when I played this for the first time. So one of the things that they cut, by the way, I'm on docked mode right now without an overclock. And this is the first level. It gets worse than this, don't worry. So things that they cut, animation quality, it drops quite significantly, the frame rate. So you see this guy working, you go back, and he'll be like at 10 FPS, which is a logical sacrifice. But it's okay, it's understandable. But I cannot believe how they could fit self-shadows plus real-time. The good visual of the game, that global illumination they baked in, it still works over here. There's a lot of pop-in with the shadows, the grass, and the geometry. But again, we're playing this on a Nintendo Switch. So yeah. Another thing that I noticed very obviously was there's a lot less stuff on the ground, less detailed. The characters are also less detailed, which makes complete sense. But they still retain, you can notice which character is which in a correct way. It's a little bit over sharpened though. But we're in dark mode right now. What would I recommend in this case? We're dropping frames over here and all that, but it's not the worst it can be. As soon as you get into a more complex environment, this can happen, which are drops into the 20s. Usually places with a good amount of NPCs and more geometric complexity. So it's understandable considering it's CryEngine. My 4-core 8-thread CPU on the Steam Deck is maxed out here as well. So the Switch has only 4 cores and it still runs the game. Now that it loaded, it's a little bit better though. But it still drops here and there. No big deal, slower paced game. But you can do something pretty interesting on the Switch, of course, which is enable an overclock. So my overclock is 1963 on the CPU, 998 on the GPU, and on the memory 2400 MHz. That means that the game now has more room to spare. It's not only CPU, but on the GPU it's improved quite significantly. And at the same time, you're getting a resolution boost. This game has dynamic resolution. So the dynamic resolution really helps in this case, because now that we have more performance, it's way crispier, especially if you are playing on a monitor, like I'm doing right now, because we're playing docked. So the texture quality is still the same. That wasn't supposed to happen, but that's fine, whatever. But it's way smoother. You're now basically locked at 30, and the game looks better, way better on the screen. So yeah, it's great. But you need an overclock to get this kind of performance, which is to be expected. I mean, it's a CryEngine game on Nintendo Switch. Let that sink in. Our main limitation, apart from the GPU, is the CPU. As you can see here, we're basically locked at 20 FPS. So again, understandable considering that this game in this area, at least on my PC, is super demanding. But I'm still impressed that the game actually looks good. That's the thing that I was afraid of the most. Like, okay, there's impossible ports out there, but many of them just look bad. This one actually retains visuals very well, in my opinion at least. But as you can see, it's very hard on the Switch. It drops into the 20s, which again, understandable considering what we're playing here. But if you enable an overclock, well, what happens? Well, we're now at 30 FPS with drops into the upper 20s, so significantly better, as you can probably notice. So on the CPU side, we are less than 90% now. On the GPU, we're maxed out, so we're now actually GPU bound instead of CPU bound. So is it perfect? No, but it's way better. If you have a hack switch, please overclock it for this game at least. If you're planning on playing in portable mode, in docked mode. But this game is clearly made to be played portably, at least for the Switch. The docked part is a little bit too much for it, in my opinion, considering the resolution. Okay, so let me show you now portable mode, that I think is the most interesting. Alright guys, we're now in portable mode. And in my opinion, this is way better when it comes to visuals. The resolution is lower than dock mode, of course, but with the smaller screen and the OLED panel, it pops so much. So it's way better when it comes to that, at least in my opinion. So my advice for this one is to play in portable mode. As you can probably notice, we're using 4.3 watts, so we got 4 hours of battery with this. The first town is fine. It will still drop frames, of course. We now have less GPU clock, and the CPU is still getting completely destroyed by this game. So as you can see, it can still drop into the 20s very easily when there is any town to speak of. But again, in my opinion, what's an achievement here is that it actually works. And it looks good. It's not that they disabled the shadows completely, removed the textures. Somebody put an effort into this, and it shows. So if you want to fix that issue about the frame rates, well, you can sacrifice battery life doing an overclock. So we increase the CPU to 1963, the GPU to 768, which is the maximum in portable mode, and the memory to 2400, once again. And what do we get? Basically 30 FPS now. There's still drops here and there, but we were very CPU limited. The CPU was at 1000 MHz, 1020 actually, and now being at 1963 is way more stable, obviously, and the internal resolution increases due to the extra GPU headroom that we have now. So it actually looks more crisp, because the game with dynamic resolution is saying, oh, we have power to spare, let's increase the resolution. So it looks very close to native on the Switch's screen. As you can see, there's popping of the shadows, of the geometry, of the grass, of the animations, all that. But again, you get this game portable on the Switch, which you can already do on Steam Deck, but the Steam Deck is way more powerful. And I mean, it's more of an expected thing. On the Switch, at least to me, it's completely unexpected that it works this well. So let's now go into the demanding part. In the meantime, we disable the overclock. So you can see kind of the worst case scenario, to say it in some way. Okay, welcome back to the worst case scenario. So lots of lights, plus the NPCs and all the geometry of the castle. So you're basically into the 20s, which again, it is noticeable, but it's not like we're doing combat at this moment. When I was doing combat, it was okay, because it's usually more open locations, nothing with lots of geometry. So you'll notice those drops, I think in the smaller screen, while it's still noticeable. I mean, look at this. It makes sense considering the graphics, at least in my opinion. So now it's time for an overclock. Same overclock as before, but now in a more demanding environment. And it's fixed. So I wish we could do this by default, because we got more than 3 hours of battery with this, and the game looks so much better when it comes to resolution. And well, the frame rate, of course. I mean, look at that frame rate now. It completely fixes the performance on the game. So great job to the developer that made this port. They outdid themselves. I'm in a private area, no problem. I'm very sneaky. So yeah, let me show you one more thing. Alright, so here we have an FMV, which are a little bit pixelated, but they do the job just fine. It's loading, hi there. And we are basically at the beginning of the game. And we are fleeing, this is with an overclock again. And we're basically at 30 FPS, and as you can see there's a lot of vegetation pop in. A good amount of effects, at a lower frame rate than in the PC version obviously. Also the effects are popping in, all the grass, all the fences, the houses. But again, considering the graphics, those are sacrifices that need to be made for this game to actually work. Even with those cuts, I'm pretty blown away that this actually works on Switch. But you can see the limitations quite easily. The thing with this part as well, it will be closer to 30 when you're not overclocked, but it will be below 30. Basically 28, 29 FPS with some minor stutters here and there. But it tends to stabilize very quickly. So an overclock fixes it, but with an overclock, considering it's a slower paced game, I don't think it's the end of the world. Also, the UI is pretty small considering the Switch's screen size, especially if you go to the... especially if you go to the UI here on the inventory. But otherwise, a very good looking game. Another impossible port brought to Switch, but now it actually is one of those that actually happens to look good. I mean, look at that shadow. This looks great. I don't know how they did it. So we'll see what happens next. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want me to cover more impossible ports on the Switch, let me know. I also do Steam Deck videos, so check those out in my channel. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys.